Today's episode is brought to you by Domain.com.
What's up, man? You alright?
Welcome to Film Riot's Epic Summer. Today we are jumping back into post-production with part 2 of Post, and I've said it every week, if you have not seen our short film U.F.Oh Yeah, this is where you want to go. But now let's jump into how we made this guy. Oh my god! First thing was the look of the ship. I wanted almost an old school, stereotypical, sort of cartoonish vibe to the ship, so Stark and I gathered a ton of reference images that we could send over to our modeler, Jeff Hardouin, along with a bunch of detailed notes like the size the ship would be in reality. Getting references and being as specific as possible is extremely important to your time and budget, since the more time you spend going back and forth with your artist, the more money it is that you're spending. But after modeling was finished, Jeff handed that over for texture and lighting. This is the process which we start to make it look real. Kevin George added all the scratches and material that give the model its reflective properties. We also sent over a plate, which is one of our actual shots from the film itself, so he could also roughly match the lighting, which he kept as flexible as possible so we could tweak it later. And since at this point we have our finished model, I was able to start our previs pass while we waited for the texture and lighting to be complete. Stark exported a .obj for me to bring into Element 3D and easily add and animate this temp UFO in my shots for Stark to use later as reference. To do this, I went into my edit inside Adobe Premiere, right-clicked the clip I needed to add my temp effects to, and sent it to After Effects. Using Dynamic Link this way helped to streamline the process and easily let me make tweaks to refine my pacing. Since I can now come into After Effects, add and animate the ship using Element 3D, hit save, then jump back into Premiere to see the shot is now updated with my changes. This was massively helpful in refining all the moves and pace, since how the UFO reacts in the scene was really important in getting the ideas of its struggle and scene progression across. But once I went through the entire film, adding in my VFX, I was able to send that out to a few trusted people to get notes back. That way they can see what I intend with the second half. But now I can still easily make changes before I start dedicating some serious render time to the scene. But after I get my notes back, I make some changes, unlock the cut, and then I can start sending each of these previs or temp VFX shots to Stark for him to start matching all the movement. Since it's hard to keep context in mind when you're going one shot at a time, this really helps us dial it all in. By this point, Kevin was finished texturing and lighting and handed that off to Stark, which the first thing Stark did was to match the position of the previs that I made, including its animation. Then once he was ready to render, Stark went to his render pass manager and added all the passes he thought we might need for compositing later. He also rendered out a .exr file because it can hold all the passes within a single file. For example, a .png can hold RGB and alpha, while .exr can hold alpha, velocity, depth, matte IDs, reflection, specular, and so on. This makes it easier because now he only has to worry about a single image sequence versus multiple folders filled with all sorts of passes. And now we move into compositing. The first thing to do here is to change your color space to 32-bit, sRGB, and linear in the comp settings. This is because our .exr files are either 16 or 32-bit files, and everything will look wrong if you keep it at 8-bit. And the reason behind that is because the colors are outside the range of what an 8-bit image spectrum can hold. Sort of like how you could put a car in a garage, but you can't put a garage in a car. We use After Effects as our compositor. Stark used a plugin called Pro EXR that breaks each channel of the .exr files into its own image sequence and actually creates an assembly comp where it shows all the render passes in a nice, neatly laid out grid. The point of rendering everything in passes is that you have more flexibility while compositing. For example, most of the renders had a really strong orange or blue reflection. If we just rendered it as is in a single image sequence, it'd be really difficult to change the colors of those reflections without affecting the rest of the model's colors as well. But since we have that reflection pass, we can just change the hue, saturation, opacity, or even brightness of just that layer instead of the whole thing, and this makes it much more flexible. So as a director, I can come in and ask for changes that Stark can make easily without having to re-render everything. The main things that help fit the UFO in the scene was of course rendering the lights in the proper position, meaning lighting the ship to match the lights in our actual scene, and the addition of atmosphere, which helped to blend the ship a lot and gave it a great sense of scale. Now I know this was a surface overview of this process, but it would take like 2 hours of an episode to really dive into it, but maybe we will get into something like that in the future. In the meantime though, let's thank some sponsors and then get to some tractor beam action. Domain.com is a place to go if you have an idea and you're thinking about it. Why not think about it with Domain.com? They have a list of 200 plus domain extensions, and that list is growing. Extensions like .ninja, .expert, .club, .nyc, all extensions that will help push your brand even further. Plus, we can save you money by using coupon code FilmRight at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your web hosting, your domain names, your email. So when you think domain names, think domain.com.
This is it! I've been chosen!
The tractor beam started way before compositing. Inside of Stark's 3D application, he added a light pass, which included only the light that he had set inside the hull of the ship. So once inside After Effects, he opened this lighting pass composition created by Pro EXR, then duplicated the layer so that we now have the exact copy of the light. On the top layer, we add an inner-outer key to eat away at the alpha's edges, which would make the disc smaller, then blurred the edges slightly. On the bottom layer, we added a tint effect to make the white a little bit of a darker gray, so now we're left with this gray disc with a smaller, brighter, whiter disc on top. The reason for this brightness change has to do with how shine works, which we're about to use. Now in our main comp, you will add the lighting pass comp that we just created to our current U.F.O comp and turn the blending mode of this layer to add. This will look out of place since it's just a gray disc with a smaller white one in the middle, but now we're gonna add our shine to our layer. You'll notice that when you add shine and then move the anchor point around, the middle is brighter than the outer edges. That's because shine uses the luminance of the layer to decide on its actual luminance, which is what we set up before. Now move the anchor point until it looks like a beam pointed at your actor. You'll notice that the beam goes on forever and isn't flat on the bottom where it should be. This is a simple fix. Make a layer above your shine layer and turn off its visibility since we're only using this as a track matte for the shine layer. Next, we will add a mask to the ground area of the invisible layer so that the beam is flat on the ground. Then add some feathering to your mask so that the beam isn't perfectly cut off, but has a small amount of softness to it. Now, in the shine layer, we turn its track matte to alpha invert, and you're good to go.
Come on! What are you waiting for? My body is willing!
But that's it. I know for some watching, this made total sense and might even be a little bit easy, but for others, this could be a bit more complicated than usual. But even if this is above the level of what you're currently working at, there are still a ton of great takeaways and techniques and ideas here that you can take and repurpose in your own way. But that is it for today. Again, all the filmmakers involved are in the notes below, and you can find more U.F.O goodies on our store page right here, including the previs to final VFX comparison, and I'll see you guys next week.